Rosen and Katya were dating. She worked as a cleaner for upper class houses in Sofia, and Rosen insisted that she gives him the keys to the houses and the access to the alarms so he could rob them. Katya, though, did not want to have him commit a crime, and afterwards she broke up with him over it. They got into a very heated argument. Rosen was feeling very betrayed and angry, so he decided to get his revenge on her. Rosen Zelef Angelov was born on the 24th of April 1964 in the village of Drobwa, Bulgaria. He had an older brother and a younger sister. He graduated from high school and worked as a taxi driver in Sofia for more than 10 years. He was a troublemaker since childhood, being arrested for vandalism in the late 1970s. In 1981, he became a soldier, but even after serving the military, he still had a criminal's mind and organized a gang with three other former soldiers. Then, from May to October 1983, they rampaged and stole from more than 40 homes. They were eventually arrested and sentenced in the same year to 2.5 years in prison. After getting out of prison, though, Rosen did not learn his lesson and continued his crime spree. In 1994, he was convicted of a crime related to faulty currency trading. Then, in 97, he was sentenced to 7 years for ape being released early in 2002, having served only 5 years in prison. And again, in 2005, he was detained on another charge but was found not guilty and thus acquitted of all charges. But in 2007, he was detained for having sex with a 12-year-old girl, and for that crime, he, in 2009, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He served 6 out of these 8 years, which is very important for you to remember because it will be very relevant by the end of this video. After getting out of prison once again, he started working as a taxi driver, where the same year he was involved in a car accident. He had crashed into a tram, and his car and the tram exploded. He was sentenced to probation and a fine of more than 5,000 leva. His friends, the ones who helped him before with theft, called him Forrester and described him as a cunning and clever villain. He lived mostly in isolation. He had no documents, no permanent jobs, no permanent housing. He was very fond of weapons, and pods of grenades were found in his house. He was the ultimate red flag. Katya Kyukova lived in Novi Isker with her family and dog, and she worked as a cleaner for upper class houses in Sofia. She was a normal woman in her 30s, just living a normal life. It is not known how Rosen met her, but it is known that they dated for a bit and broke up. And while they were still dating, Rosen had insisted that she give him the keys and access to the alarms of the houses she was cleaning at the time, so he could rob them. Katya did not want to help him, and then she realized that Rosen was dating her for selfish reasons, so she broke up with him. Katya started dating another man maybe a few months after her and Rosen's breakup, and his name was Bobby. She definitely saw that red flag and ditched Rosen as soon as she could, but she did not expect the hellfire he would bring to her as revenge. On December 31st, 2017, Katya Krikova and her family were preparing to celebrate New Year's Eve at 5 Lezansky Dole Street in Novi Iskar. During that day at 7:30 p.m., Katya decided to go for a walk with her dog for a bit with the plans to go back home and continue with the preparations later. The exact time of her death is unknown, but both Kyukova and her dog were murdered on the exact walk by Rosen Angelov. At about 11 p.m., Angelov arrived at Kyukova's home with her body in his arms. There, he killed five of her family members: her dad, Nedelcho, her grandma, her younger brother Georgy, her stepsister Nancy, and Katya's boyfriend, Bobby, by shooting them with a handgun so that there were no witnesses of Katya's death. The bodies of Nedelch and Georgi were lying on their backs in the living room. The two have been shot in the kitchen and dragged into the living room. The grandmother was on the bed. She was sitting because her legs were hanging off the couch, but after the bullets, she leaned slightly to the side. The father, Nedelcho, was shot about a dozen times. Rosen mainly shot him in the head, but he also had wounds on his arms and thighs, suggesting that he was trying to protect himself from the bullets while his son was shot in the chest. On the second floor were the bodies of Bobby, Nancy, and the dog. Body was shot with 3 to 4 bullets, one of which hit between the eyes, and Nancy was killed with one shot to the temple. Her legs were also hanging from the bed, and her entire dress, which was white, was red now, soaked in blood. Rosen tracked through the blood of the victims and left traces, which he then unsuccessfully tried to erase. After that, Angelov drove off in Yukova's jeep with her body still inside. He threw the body into a nearby well and cleaned the fingertips from the car before abandoning it. A pistol with a silencer was used during the killings, and at which her neighbors did not hear any noise going in the house. On the 2nd of January, Katya Kukova's uncle, Nedelch's brother, who did not live with his family at the time, called the police since he was unsuccessful in contacting them for hours. Police arrived at the house and eventually found the five dead bodies. On the 3rd of January, Angelov was declared as wanted for the murders. His home was searched in the village of Vukovo, and computer with child pornography was found in his house. He moved to an abandoned villa near his home after being declared as wanted. On the 4th of January, He shot and killed himself with a pistol. A tablet and a phone were found near him, from which he had viewed more child pornography. His body was found on the 7th of January. Katya's uncle, who was the one who eventually had called the police, filed a lawsuit against the prosecutor's office over the deaths of Katya herself and their family. The reason for the lawsuit was that Rosen should have been in prison at the time of the killings. His last sentence, originally of 8 years, was to end on January 4th, 2018, but he got out earlier than that. If Rosen would have been still in prison during the incident, this tragedy might have not happened at all. Prosecutors were to pay Katya's uncle 50,000 leva for her death and another 30,000 leva for the death of the family. But the lawsuit was eventually sadly dismissed.